Alrighty, good morning, good evening, good day. That's the beautiful thing about online. It could happen anytime. Well, where were we? Last time we killed the Republic. The Empire is alive and well. Long live the Roman Empire. It'll be around for almost 500 years. We don't really have 500 years to go over it, which is a shame because the Roman Empire is absolutely fascinating. We go through the entire planet in one semester, so we're going to end up hitting the high points. As you know, our first emperor is Augustus from 27 BC to 14 AD. That's the very first Roman emperor, who didn't like being called an emperor, by the way, like the title of first citizen. He was, still have that inclination, that circuit breaker the Romans have about one man being in control, despite the fact they've had a couple dictators over the last century. But nonetheless, Octavian is our first Roman emperor, calls himself Augustus. 27 BC to 14 AD, the numbers start climbing now. Now, the guy he wanted to be a successor ended up dying in Teutoburger Wald up in Germany in the year 9 AD. So he had to run with a guy named Tiberius in 14. So from 14 to 37, it's Tiberius. Tiberius is a good emperor, likes the title emperor, doesn't bother him any. Ended up living on the Isle of Capri the last 10 years of his reign. Died, some say old age, some say his nephew held a pillow over his face. And his nephew is a guy named Caligula. You've heard that name. They made a movie about him way back in the 80s. It was declared to be soft porn. Caligula was nuts. No one really liked him that much. They were very terrified of this guy. One point he made his horse a senator. He had all the wives of the senators of Rome sell their services, and donate the proceeds to Rome. They had a budget deficit at the time. Just not a very likable guy. And in 41 AD, his own bodyguards, the Praetorian Guards, turned and stabbed him to death. There was a little bit of consternation because they weren't sure who the successor was going to be. And of course, the Praetorian Guard could be in trouble. They just killed the emperor after all. Anyway, they run into the library, and guess who's hiding behind the drapes with his feet sticking out? Yep, it turns out it's Caligula's uncle, Claudius. Claudius, bit of a bookworm, so they pull him out and they made him Emperor of Rome right there at Dewey Decimal Section D, I suppose. Well, no one's really sure how good of an emperor Claudius was going to be, and of course, Claudius was smart enough to know the best way to get everyone off his back was to, go conquer something. So he grabs a book on generals, reads it on horseback on his way to Britain, and conquers the southern half of Britain. Way to go, Claudius. Claudius is going to die in 68. He doesn't really name a successor. He does name a successor. I'm sorry, named Nero. Nero gets a lot of bad press. Had a big fire in Rome. Nero fiddled while Rome burned. Didn't have a fiddle, might have been a harp. He tried his best to, help out with relief efforts, but, it's 68 AD. It's really kind of hard to get a FEMA-like effort running on something like this. He wanted to be actually an athlete. He never really wanted the job of being an emperor, and he also fancied himself a poet. He was a good athlete, terrible poet, and his poetry wasn't received well, so he committed suicide. Couldn't even do that right, holding the sword over his chest, and a slave kind of got impatient and shoved the blade in. Well, I guess they let him off the hook. They had a brief civil war the year of four emperors. The guy named Vespasian took over. He's not in the Julio-Claudian dynasty. This is a completely new guy. And Vespasian was a former general. He retired and was selling mules. So he was the ancient world's version of a used car salesman. Anyway, he ruled from 69 to 79, and he put his son Titus in charge. Titus is the rock star. Everybody loves Titus. Titus takes over in 79, gets pneumonia, and dies in 81. And here's his brother Domitian, another thoroughly unlikable guy. When he was a kid, he used to pull the wings off of flies. Gets older, kicking small animals, kicking stray dogs, kicking people. Now he's an emperor, and he was executing people left and right. Thought everybody was coveting his throne, and he kind of had an accident in 96. Yep, not exactly sure what happened. Nobody asked too many questions. Suddenly Domitian is dead and we need a new emperor. This brings us to the 5 good emperors. Now, here's the problem you might have noticed already. Succession, right? You never know who the next guy is going to be. And sometimes you do know and you wish you didn't. See, the problem with keeping it in the family is maybe the son's an idiot. He might actually be a genius. You don't really know. You got to roll the dice sometimes. Of course, other people thought maybe electing somebody. Yeah, what could go wrong there? Any number of things. But at least the people are speaking on that. Right? Some people have had lotteries. You know, it's really insane. But here are the 5 good emperors, and there's Nerva, the guy who engineered the plot against Domitian, and he came up with a method that worked for a while because we had 5 good emperors, one behind the others. You can see by the years, one right behind the other. Now Nerva's an old man. He's got a couple sons, but he doesn't want them being emperors. And why? Because in case you haven't noticed, Roman emperors tend to not a lot of them die in bed. You know, he gets a very stressful job, and usually, you know, they end up getting assassinated. So he decides to pick a guy named Trajan to be his successor. Trajan's a general, and then he also has a backup plan there, a guy named Hadrian, who's actually a cousin of Trajan, but they're not directly related to each other. Anyway, Nerva's gone in 98. Here comes Trajan, and Trajan is a very good emperor. Remember, he was a general. I always like Trajan, too, because he's a bit of a smart arse. Yeah. Got into war, Parthia, and won. He sat there in the Persian Gulf thinking of India, saying, if only I was younger, thinking about Alexander. Trajan's wall over there in Scotland, later Hadrian's wall. Trajan got it started. Hadrian took the credit for it. He was over there telling people how to lay bricks. He's telling the bricklayer how to lay bricks. Of course, he's a Roman emperor. He can't really tell him to shove off, let me do my job. He died in 117. We get Hadrian. Hadrian's a good emperor. 117 to 138. Conquers Dacia. That's Romania. So everything's working out pretty well. We got Antonio Pius. Never really heard about him. Hear nothing about him. You know why? Because nothing wrong has happened and everything's working great. When you don't hear about anything, hey, everything's great. Then we get Marcus Aurelius, 161 to 180. Wrote a book on philosophy called Meditations. Why? Because he's got time to do it. The only thing they got to worry about is the occasional Parthian problem in the east, and you got some Germans jumping over the Rhine and Danube every now and again and walk up there and swat them out of the way. Now, Marcus Aurelius is a great emperor. People like Marcus Aurelius. Did everything right except one thing. Oh, right at the end, he loses the ball there on the goal line. Nominates his successor as his son. Oh my goodness. You know this guy. You saw the movie. So we got the 5 good emperors. Of course, you've already met some not so good, right? Caligula and Nero. And here is Commodus. This is Marcus Aurelius' son. It's easy to remember his name. Think commode. That kind of personality. Anyway, you've probably seen this guy around somewhere. Yeah, movie Gladiator. Same guy. Joaquin Phoenix. Looks like him. I've seen the statues. Even got the little scar there on the chin. Not very well liked. Megalomaniac. You know, it's sort of almost Caligula all over again. He wanted to rename Rome as Commodia. Yeah, I can see how that didn't go over too well. Died under mysterious circumstances in 192. Yeah, Domitian all over again. No one asked any questions, huh? Well, Rome is going to become unstable, right? We have people before 235. We got Septimus Servius from Carthage, of all places. Caracalla, people like this. Caracalla dies in 235. And 235 to 285, we have the barracks room emperors. 26 Roman emperors in 50 years, only one of them dies from old age. It was just unsteady, chaos, anarchy. The empire is unstable. There's no organized power outside that can attack. The German barbarians, they jump over the Rhine, Danube, loot, raid, do German stuff. It's not enough to bring the empire down. Parthia is causing problems in the east, but they're not going to march on Rome or even Constantinople or anything, right? So the only thing that kept the empire from collapsing before it did was the fact there's nobody out there that can really attack it, right? I mean, China, but that's way on the other side of Eurasia. Chinese and Romans, little contact, very little contact. That brings out Diocletian. He brings order out of chaos. He's born over in Dalmatia. Place you get Dalmatians? You like Dalmatian dogs. Anyway, over in what's Slovenia now, they have a festival in his hometown every year. But there's Diocletian. There he is. He's going to bring order out of chaos. He's going to be there for 20 years. So, stability. And how does he do this? How does Diocletian bring order out of chaos? It's going to split the empire in half. Yeah, it's too big for one guy to run. So Diocletian's going to take the east half, and the west half, Maximian, that's his drinking buddy, it's going to take the west end. Now you can tell Diocletian, here's near Byzantium, Nicomedia over here, can fight with the Parthians if they get tested, and he comes up here to do battle with the Germans and can help out the west if they need some help. And of course, Max here is running the west. Now, you see this thing divided in half. It's really divided 4 ways, right? They call him the Augusti, the Eastern Augusti, and the Caesar, that's Galerius, he is the assistant to Diocletian in the east. So he's over there in Thessalonica. Take care of stuff like Diocletian does most stuff. Of course, Max has his friend Constantinius up here on the frontier. Call him Constantinius the Pale. He was constantly suffering from pneumonia. Anyway, so that's what's going on. So not only divided in half, it's really divided 4, right? Call it the tetrarchy. Tetrarchy. There we are. So a little bit easier to run. We've got people on site that can handle stuff. The emperor doesn't have to run across the entire length of the empire. Granted, Rome has a really excellent road system, but you do have to know, look at the time period here. I mean, there's no internet. It still takes a while to go from one place to the other. So in the year 305, Diocletian and Max in the west over there, they do something no Roman emperor has ever done. They retire. That's it, 20 years. See ya. Here, Diocletian, back to Dalmatia. Play with his dogs, do some gardening. All right, the assistants step up. They get their new assistants. How's this thing going to work? Oh, total anarchy. It doesn't work. They ask Diocletian to come back. Diocletian says, I'm done. You guys work it out. Hey, who remembers Latin? In hoc signo vincens. In, this looks like sign, that's what it is. In this sign, you, ES, will be vindicated, victorious. In this sign, you will conquer. This is the original Christian symbol before the cross, right? Now, Constantine, the son of Constantinius the Pale, right? Western emperor, decides he's going to take the whole empire for himself. He's fighting one of his rivals, Licentius. And here in Italy at Malvern Bridge, one Roman army one side, Constantine's army on the other side. Not really sure how to cross this bridge under fire. It's kind of difficult to cross through a river unless your name's Alexander. Constantine had this strange habit of sleeping before battles. Yeah, string up his hammock, take a 15-minute snooze, wake up, off you go. That's confidence. Well, while he was taking his nap, he had this dream. In this sign you will conquer. He saw this burning symbol in the sky. So he had everyone paint the symbol of the Christian God on his shield, and lo and behold, in the year 312, he wins the Battle of Malvern Bridge and becomes the Emperor of Rome. In this sign you will conquer, right? Penguin fan. Here's Constantine the Great. My wife calls him Mr. Googly Eyes. Has some pretty big eyes right here, doesn't he? Constantine takes over the empire in 313 to 337. First thing he does, Edict of Milan. Tolerate Christianity. He stays a pagan, but he tolerates Christianity. Christianity is okay in his book. In 330, he moves the capital of the Roman Empire to Byzantium and renames it Constantinople. No ego problems here, right? Constantinople. And then in the year 337, when he's on his deathbed, first of all, he divides the empire in half between his 2 sons, east and west. and he decides to get baptized at the last second before he takes the final plunge. Before he heads off into the light, he gets baptized. Because you get baptized, all your sins are forgiven, right? So he's waiting till the last second, get baptized. Hey, and off we go to heaven. Smart guy. Just call Saul. Now, there's a bunch of terrible emperors. They go back, they go forth. They're really not all that great. We've got the Germans coming over the Rhine and the Danube, and this time there's something different about the raids. Yeah, the Germans used to raid, attack, burn things down, run back to Germany. Now they come across the Rhine or Danube, and they're bringing women and children. Bringing women and children because that means they're planning on staying. Something is pushing them towards the Romans. And that something, it's the Huns. Now, it's way back in 44 BC, same time Caesar is getting stabbed to death by Brutus. There's a huge battle out on the edge of China between the Chinese, Han Chinese, right? You knew that. And somebody called the Hignu. We're not sure who they are, but they seem to disappear from history, and then they pop up, an Asian tribe popping up in Eastern Europe. Might be the same people. Now, we're not sure if they're 100% Asian. They're picking people up along the way. It's kind of like a snowball, right? Then you take snow and you roll it down the hill and the snow gets bigger. At least that's how it works in Pennsylvania, right? And same thing with the Huns. They're picking people up along the way. Some are Asians. We have some other Turks over in Central Asia. As further west they go, Russians and Slavs. Even some Germans are joining them. So by the time the Huns show up in Europe, along under the leadership of Attila, okay, it's one big ethnic mishmash. And, you know, once they do DNA analysis on Hun remains, the DNA always comes back with everything in it. So Huns are an ethnic mishmash, as entire German and Slavic and Asian tribes have joined alongside. So it's kind of like a Mongol preview. So Attila is just attacking west, going to keep going as far west as he can. Attila is not stupid. Everyone thinks he's some kind of a savage. He's spent time with the Romans. He can speak Latin. He's trying to build an empire, actually, much like the Romans. The building material's a little off. Not sure he could pull this off. But he just goes charging further and further west. Comes over the Rhine, and off we go into France. Battle of Capelodian Hills, or if you want, Battle of Chalons in 451 AD. By this time, the Roman Empire is barely holding together. They've left England altogether. And then two Germanic tribes show up there, the Angles and Saxons. That sound familiar? Angles and Saxons? Anglo-Saxon? Land of the Angles? Angleland, England? We got Franks over in France. Land of the Franks, France. Germany, still Germany. You've already heard of Spain and Italy. Oh, look at this. Countries we've heard of before. Well, the Huns go as far as they can into central France, and the Roman general, a guy named Aetius, who actually met Attila at one point, manages to rally German tribes, mainly the Visigoths, together in this coalition, whatever's left of the Roman army, which has really seen better days at this point. And they fight the Huns and defeat the Huns. For the first time, Attila's been defeated. So what's Attila do? He turns south and heads right for Italy. Goes right through the Alps because, you know, they built a road to it now. Thank Hannibal for that. And the Roman army is where? Try this again. Where is the Roman army not? Where are they not? Not in Italy. Everybody's up in France. And there we are. There's nobody between Attila and Rome except Pope Leo. We're not sure what Pope Leo said to Attila, but Attila turned around, went back somewhere in Eastern Europe and died somewhere in the area of Hungary, hence the name, Hungary, claim to be descended from the Huns. Don't think they are, but can't really say they're not either. Well, that's in Aetius, of course, being a big hero of the hour, comes back to Valentinian III, who's a real piece of work, controlled by his mother, and promptly the hero of the hour gets stabbed to death. Well, if it makes you feel better, Valentinian III came to a pretty bad end as well. So the empire is staggering. It's not holding together very well. They've already lost control of England. Not the Vandals, but the Visigoths had sacked Rome in 406. At 455, right after Attila turns around, Gaiseric and the Vandals come out of North Africa, centered on Carthage again. They sack Rome in 455 right after the victory over the Huns. East is holding together pretty well, but the West is just turning into a disaster area. After the victory of the Huns, the Visigoths, they head on over to Spain, declared independence there. So the Suevi, and the empire, you can tell, is about to take a header. In 475, we've got a young man named Romulus Augustus. That name look familiar? Yep, that's the name of the first emperor right here, Augustus, and of course the guy who founded Rome. Guy who founded Rome, first emperor. They're trying to do a Control-Alt-Delete on Rome and start over. Now, it's not going to work too well because Oda Aker, the Ostrogoth, comes in and knocks him out of power, chases him off, doesn't do anything to the kid. Kid runs off, don't know really what happened to him. Some people say he went to England to become King Arthur. He might have opened up a donut shop in Philly, who knows. September the 4th, 476 AD, somewhere around 8 o'clock in the morning, the Roman Empire falls. It's all over. The Western Empire is overrun with Germans. Oda Aker, the Ostrogoth, takes Italy. The Vandals are sitting in North Africa, capital of Carthage. The Visigoths are in Spain. Angles and Saxons in Britain, right? Franks in Gaul, England and France. So it's all over. Roman Empire down for the count. Or is it? Byzantium Novum. That's right. The Western Empire is gone. The East is alive and well. We call the Eastern Roman Empire the Byzantine Empire. No Byzantine ever called himself a Byzantine. That's a word that was invented after the fall of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantines will be around until 1453, May 29th, to be exact. And it's going to be a little bit different. Technically, it's still the same old Roman Empire. It's just in the East. It's like, America takes over Japan and something happens to America. Japan's still part of the United States. But, they're going to speak Japanese and have a different character. This is what happens with the Byzantine Empire. Technically, it's still a Roman Empire, but it's centered on Constantinople, which is a Greek city. Rome, they speak Latin. Constantinople, they're speaking Greek. Right? They're also Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. So the Byzantine Empire, the Emperor of Rome and the King of the Greeks, that's what they call the emperor over there, is going to be sort of the same and very, very different at the same time. As you can tell by this Byzantine eagle, they're aware of that. Look at two heads. One faces east, one faces west. Think one day they're going to try to take Italy back? Guarantee you they're going to try. That's a story for another time. We are off to China. Have a great day.